Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad that we're having this program today on redistricting. And I'm Abigail Nichols. I'm the Loop Unit Leader, and I've been one of the more active Chicago League members on the subject of redistricting. And I want to also thank Karen Sandrick, who has kept this front and center for our members through our weekly newsletter. And also Pat Gronke for calling and asking. And as soon as she called, I said, I can't do this alone, but I know who I'd like to invite. And so now I'm going to see if I can get my agenda up the way I want to, but with screen sharing, this couldn't be more timely because briefings are about action. The league is education, decision-making, and then advocacy. And right now, the city of Chicago is coming to a pivot point on redistricting. The city of Chicago has till December 1st to decide on mapping. That means that we as league members have this month to do what we can do. And I just think, wow, about how timely today's meeting is. The action now for the state and is in the court. The state redistricting is in the courts. They've postponed judicial mapping until the next session of the assembly. The congressional districts, people seem to be sort of they are done. They have not been signed by the governor. Cook County, Chris Mims is on the call and can give people any information. It's the city of Chicago wards that are so important. Chris Kanich, a commissioner with the Chicago Advisory Redistricting Commission, is here today. The major issue before the city of Chicago right now is what map will the council determine by December 1st. They have not introduced a map. Friday, they announced 3 hearings for the public for next week. I called the Rules Committee. The districting in Chicago is being done by the Rules Committee of the City Council. It is a committee of the whole. Everybody's a member. I talked to them Friday. They do not expect any map to be introduced anytime during these hearings. She was saying it was a matter of public input, I guess, implying no maps. But we have a map. And Catherine, would you turn this over to Chris Kanich, Chicago Advisory Commissioner for Redistricting. Chris is an associate professor of computer science at the University of Illinois, Chicago. He also is a community activist, a service-oriented guy in the communities of Bridgeport and Chinatown. So let's turn this over to Chris.
Thank you so much, Abigail. I'm really, really excited to be here with you all at this briefing, just sharing something that I've been completely obsessed with over, I don't even want to say like probably the last year or so. This is an incredibly important aspect of our democracy. And before I share my screen, before I get started, I do have some background information on redistricting, but I most want to give you the juiciest, freshest information that will be most beneficial to you. So for those of you who are currently have your video on, can I get like a 1 to 5 of, 1, I know nothing at all about redistricting, start from the very, very beginning, to 5, I kind of think I know what's going on. We can go completely unscientific here. 4, awesome. 2, very cool. 4, I see some 5s. Yeah, I believe those 5s. I believe those 4s. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I can get a non-statistical sample here. That's perfect. I don't need everybody to turn their cameras on. Thank you so much for letting me know. So now I know I can go a little bit fast on some of these early things, and we can really, really get down into the brass tacks a little bit later on. And am I sharing a PowerPoint screen?
Yes, you are. Looks good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, so what we want, what I want, what I assume the League of Women Voters wants is a ward map that serves the people of the city as best it possibly can. Because as we all know, the way that these lines are drawn has tremendous implications for the elected officials that we represent and the communities that are just trying to have their own needs met and most effectively govern both themselves and the city overall. And as we know, these need to be nearly equal population. They need to be compact. They can't be broken into different islands. And based on the Voting Rights Act, they do need to include districts for racial and language minorities so that they can select their preferred candidates and not have their one person, one vote be held back by the mapping process. So as we mentioned here, these maps have to be compact. But when we look at the current ward map, it's not, I wouldn't call this compact, right? There's just a lot of absolutely comical, very, very questionable things on here, right? We have the Lobster District, the infamous Lobster District that includes, some of Wicker Park, some of Bucktown, some of River West, some of Lincoln Park, some of, almost going up to Lincoln Square, some of Old Town, some of Streeterville, Gold Coast, all like it's getting as many different separate communities put together in one ward. And if you wanted to say, oh, I live in the Gold Coast and I have a very important problem that I need addressed at the city level, at the community level, well, you're like 10% of this mix match quilt of a ward. Good luck trying to get these other groups that are in a very, very different community than yours to band together and support some, grassroots candidate that really has a bunch of good ideas. Good luck. Likewise, if we come down here to the Inglewood area, so we've got the Inglewood community area, we've got the West Inglewood community area. These two are broken up into 6 different wards, even though they, very, very much culturally, very, very much economically function as one reasonably cohesive community down there in Inglewood. And so even though this one cohesive community is trying their gosh darndest to increase the safety, like better the education, better the economic opportunities, if they want to do something cohesively, they've got to talk to 5 or 6 different alder people in order to get something done that actually focuses on Inglewood and the problems that they have. And so these are 2 of the most egregious examples, but anywhere on this map, you can take a look at some of these and they're very, very questionably drawn maps to say the least. And so I've been thinking about this for quite some time and discussing with a lot of my colleagues and my community members, trying to think, what's the right way to communicate about what's happening? How did we get to a ward map that looks like this and municipal election turnout that's fewer than 1 in 5 eligible voters voting in those elections, right? That is where we are at in our democracy. And my argument is that these 2 things are very, very tightly linked together, right? So, when there is a district set up, you get to play soccer, have some sort of competition where you're saying the best idea is going to win in this competition, but whoever wins the soccer game gets to say, well, I'm going to make up some house rules for how this happens. Nothing too extreme, like I get 2 points, you get 1 point, but maybe I can tilt the field just a little bit. And when the field is tilted even 1 degree, any one game, it looks fair, right? The ball goes back and forth, whatever's happening. But over time, you do this over and over and over again. The team that is on the higher side, going downhill, they're going to be just a little bit faster. They're going to be able to kick the ball just a little bit further. And you do this over and over and over again. And this is one of the many, many incumbent biases that we have in our elections in the United States. There's plenty of other reasons that incumbents have an easier time than challengers. But when an incumbent can draw a ward map specifically however it is they choose, they have an incredible amount of power to distort the results of that election in a way that really does diminish the 1 person, 1 vote in the city. So yeah, individual communities are split between several wards, wards span several communities. There's this substantial incumbent advantage. These are all really, really bad outcomes of the structure that we have when we say, hey, politician, you're running in 2023, better draw the map that you're going to use a year and a half early, right? And then they just get so much of that extra opportunity to tilt the field in their favor. And why I really care about this is that I think when you have a battle of ideas, when you have a level playing field, where I have my community, I have my ideas, I have my proposals for solving our problems in Chicago, and if everybody's on the same platform, my hope, my crazy, like just incredibly optimistic view is that the best ideas are going to win out. But when there's such an incredible tilt, you're not going to have nearly as much of an opportunity for the best ideas to win out. It's going to be, whoever's dad was in office before, whoever has the most connections, whoever does these things. And that's where this disillusionment with democracy in the city comes in. I talk to so many of my neighbors and like, oh, the fix is in. Oh, like who cares about this? Like they're going to do what they're going to do regardless of what I want. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And part of it is enabled by the ward mapping. So all hope is not lost here. There is one weird trick of the Illinois state statutes that empower any 10 out of the 50 alder people of the city to submit an alternate ward map to the city clerk. If they vote no on whatever the city council chooses to put forward as the map passed as an ordinance, so passing as an ordinance requires 26 votes plus the vote of the mayor, and so that means you got 24 other people, any 10 of which could say, you know what, I didn't want that one, I would rather a different map. And so this is really an opportunity that Change Illinois, a local good government nonprofit, saw this as an opportunity to say, listen, we can come up with a map that is supported by the people, that is supported by engaging with the community, that is drawn by the people. And that is what we have been working on for several months leading up to now. And we came up with our people's map over the course of 31 live streamed and recorded meetings between June and October of this year. We took hundreds of different inputs from people from all throughout the city. All regions of the city were engaged over the course of this process. The entire thing happened out in the open, and you might not want to watch all of these things, but you absolutely can. There was no back room where the backroom deals were happening. It is Zoom, and it's recorded, and it's there if you want to take a look at it. And we prioritized keeping communities together and racial equity. And we ended up drawing a map that looks very, very different from the current ward map. So I'm going to take this moment to jump over, and I'm going to do a really quick introduction to our map. And then I'm going to go back to a little bit more of that strategic stuff that is incredibly important before we jump into questions about the map specifically. So this is going to be a taste. So here we see, this is a map of the current ward map. I live down here in Bridgeport. And so the very, very densely populated Chinatown area is split up from the remainder of the greater Chinatown area, which kind of extends down southeast along Archer. It's split into 3 different wards with the 25th, the 11th, and the 12th, but that's just local stuff for me. However, we could take a look at Lincoln Park. We could take a look at Inglewood. That's probably going to be one of our best options here. So if I turn off our current ward map, I come over here to the people's map, and it looks, zoomed in, these look a lot more like our community areas. These look a lot more like the things that we think of colloquially as neighborhoods, whether it's Inglewood or Woodlawn or Hyde Park and like the Hyde Park Kenwood area. What we were able to do was listen to the people first and foremost, not the politicians trying to get reelected, not the developers that want to give a whole bunch of money to whoever's going to let them keep on developing. We wanted to listen to the people first and foremost, and this is what we came up with. We started from a blank slate, so some of these wards are going to be very, very different from the ward map that currently exists or the one that will be proposed pretty soon. But that's because we wanted to put people first and not incumbents first. And we want to say, you know what, the best incumbents are going to be able to run and represent their community as best they possibly can. I was very excited when I heard that my representative, Marie Newman, said, you know what, I'm coming right out the gate. I am going to run in the new Illinois 6. And that's because rather than being beholden to a very specific set of people or a very specific location, she's a good representative. I'm biased, obviously. I'm a big fan and a volunteer. But coming out and saying, look, regardless of what the mapping is, I have the support of the people. Any alderman who has the support of the people, who wants what's best for them, is going to be able to run and win in a ward that roughly represents their community, right? That is, again, my incredibly optimistic view of this, but I genuinely believe that is the truth. So I'm going to switch back over before switching over to specific questions about our map or our process or anything along those lines, and talk about this next month coming up here. So strategically, what needs to happen is we need to get 10 people on board with the ward map. What has been happening so far is that I believe it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Latino Caucus had drawn their map, and that was released out into the press. We saw the Latino Caucus map. I don't have it pulled up right here on my screen right now. It looks better than the current ward map, but it's a variation on a theme of this ward map. It was very much drawn in a way to maintain the incumbent preferences. Everyone is being drawn, or vast majority of people are being drawn into their own ward, as if these wards are owned by the incumbent and not by the 56,000 people that live in that ward. And even what I've heard, I haven't seen the Black Caucus ward map yet, but my understanding is that their intention is to make sure that every one of the 50 incumbent alder people are drawn into their own ward. And that it's so blatantly privileging the person who already has a substantial amount of power over the 56,000 people that need to have their voices heard, that you can just call a spade a spade. This is incumbents, like the political class, trying to protect their own rather than protect their constituents, which grinds my gears for absolute certain. Anyhow, I digress. The Latino Caucus released their map. It looks very, very much like the current incumbent map, with some improvements, no question. The Black Caucus will release their map, and because the Black Caucus has not released their map, a lot of alder people are saying, you know what, I haven't seen these other maps. I don't want to endorse something before I have to. And so there's a lot of folks that have been saying, we love your process, we love your map, we can't endorse it yet, or we can't endorse it because I don't know what the other maps are going to look like. But presumably, the Black Caucus map will come out, and we will be able to say, look, there's a Latino Caucus map, there's a Black Caucus map. They accomplish different things on the margins, but first and foremost, they accomplish keeping politics as usual in Chicago. The People's Map does not do that. The People's Map accomplishes a people first, a community first map of Chicago, and it will be in the best interests of the people. We just need 10 alders to sign on. I think the first thing that's hard is getting to 10, but the very, very close second is getting from 0 to 1. That's the most important thing. And so right now, if there is anyone who lives in, let's pull this one back up, Maria Haddon's ward, Andre Vasquez's ward, Matt Martin's ward, Rosana Rodriguez Sanchez's ward, Carlos Ramirez Rosa's ward, Daniel Espada's ward, Michelle Smith's ward, Byron Cito Lopez's ward, Jeanette Taylor's ward, Leslie Harrison's ward. These are all focus wards for us, of people where we think, you know what, these are progressive, these are members of the Progressive Caucus. In many cases, they won very, very people-focused campaigns. We believe that these are the types of people who would support a map that's drawn for the best interest of the people rather than the best interest of the politicians. So I know I rattled off a very long list of alder people there. I'd be more than happy to go over that in a little bit more detail. But what we need, as Abigail was mentioning, is we need people to demand the people's map be either the map that gets put in or the map that the negotiation starts from. Because if the map that the negotiation between the Black Caucus map and the Latino Caucus map, that's going to end up being more of the same. If the conversation starts from the people drew this map, this is what the people of the city want, full stop. Start from that and make whatever changes you need to make to actually get something that will either get 41 votes, 50 votes, 26 votes, or even just 10 votes, so that we, the people, can make that decision about what ward map we want, right? I think that one of the most important things about endorsing the people's map, if that's what League of Women Voters wants to do, or any organization wants to do, the endorsing the map does not mean this is set in stone, this is going to be what the next ward map is. Endorsing this map, in my mind personally, really means sending this map to a referendum so that the people of the city have the final say. Right? It's not an extra election that costs millions upon millions of dollars. It is an extra question on the ballot in June. What do you want your ward map to look like moving forward, instead of letting whatever happens in a back room happen and giving us another crazy gerrymandered set of wards for the next 10 years? So that is my spiel. I'm very, very excited to discuss with you this map, discuss our process, discuss the strategy moving forward, anything at all. Please let me know. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. That was fantastic. It sounds like you're ready for questions then, correct, Chris?
Absolutely.
I don't see any in the chat at this time. So maybe you could just for a moment give us a timeline on what's happening.
What's happened so far, or what's happening moving forward?
Maybe start back a little bit so far, but what are the next steps, and put some dates. I know there's something coming up by Monday. I know there's a lot going on. I wonder if you could just clue us in on what's ahead of us.
Right. So as was mentioned, the most important, impactful thing that people can do right now is get on the docket to speak as a community member advocating for the People's Map at one of, or all three of the upcoming committee hearings on redistricting. Those are nominally going to be public hearings to receive public input. If a strong number of people do show up and say, look, the people already did the work, follow the will of the people, they did the hard work for you, that would be fantastically helpful for us. That's happening this week. At some point, it was probably supposed to be last week, but it might be this week, it might be the next week, or who knows. The Black Caucus will release their map that they're going to start their negotiations from. And at that point, the main maps that I believe are going to be the big players will end up out there in the open to a certain extent. My understanding is that in previous decades, the Eddie Burkes of the world had a very tight hold on redistricting, and whatever happened in the map room more or less ended up being what happens in the ward map. My understanding is that that's not the case this time. The map room does not have the same sway as it has in previous decades, and so the negotiation between the Black Caucus map, the Latino Caucus map, and the people is really going to be that main point of contention. So once those maps come out, that's when your newspapers, your letters to the editor, your editorial boards, your organization statements can say, look, we see what our options are. We see that our options are flavor one of politics as usual, flavor two of politics as usual, or follow the people. Of these three options, that's the one that seems the best. There is a very important deadline in the state statutes of December 1st. So by December 1st, the ward map is supposed to be passed, but, and I am not an attorney, and I don't even play one on TV. However, when I read that statute, there's no ramification for like what happens if it isn't passed by December 1st. Nothing whatsoever. Somebody like a group of 10 alder people or even a citizen could just go in, walk in there and say, hey, here's a new ward map, submit it to the city clerk. But as soon as the city council, whether it's December 2nd or January 12th, or January 29th, I think even in some previous decades, as soon as they submit their ordinance that they've passed through city council, that is that is the start of a clock of, I believe it's 14 days. So December 1st is the deadline, but it's a very soft deadline. And so it's very, very likely that city council will not pass it by December 1st. It might go further than that, maybe into January, maybe even February. However, as soon as they actually do pass that ordinance, there's a 14-day window where anyone who said no has the opportunity to say yes on an alternate map. If they say no, there's a very reasonable likelihood that the 10 or so people could figure out something that they would prefer to whatever they decided to vote no on. And that's another point where we need to do a really, really big push. You need to support the people's map. We see that you don't support politics as usual. We see that you should do something. You should think big and make no small plans and make a really big change to the ward map for the benefit of the people. All right.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to go ahead and stop screen share, and we might go to gallery mode so that people can raise their hands. We do have some questions in the chat that I want to move forward. Pat wants to know how many aldermen do you know already who are in favor of the people's map? Do you have?
Yes, so that number, so if we are talking about people who have endorsed the people's map, that number is 0. And that number is a little discouraging to me, but it's 0% surprising because there's a negotiation happening between the current members of city council. And if you are that first person before that negotiation has finished and you say, whatever it is you have that you want to put forward, I haven't even seen it yet, I'm going to say no. That puts a gigantic target on your back to be like, okay, well, I can draw him out of his ward. I can, totally chop it up and split it up among other people. I don't really need to, help his community or him at all. And so there's an immense cost for alder people right now to supporting the map, but there's little to no upside. And that's where we come in. That's where making sure that these alder people know that we demand that they follow the will of the people instead of the will of self-preservation and support the people's map. So very easy, quick question there. There probably are over 10, and Abigail could potentially correct me on this because I believe you all have done this fantastic series of Zooming with an alderman, and many of them were wholly in support of an independent process, a people-driven process. And so there are many, many aldermen, probably over 10, that have said that they support this process. They support the map in theory, but they have not yet signed on. That's something that we're going to have to wait at least until the Black Caucus map comes out to really, really make that big you must support. But until then, what we need is people blowing their phones up, showing up at their office saying, the people already drew this map. Why aren't you supporting it?
Wonderful. Chris has several questions. I'm going to give you the first two. And it is, do you have support from community groups? If so, who and how many? And then follow that up with how many business communities?
So the community groups, we have had a lot of really positive feedback from a substantial number of groups in the Asian American community, because one really big difference between the Latino Caucus Map and the People's Map is the People's Map draws the first ever majority Asian American ward in the history of the city of Chicago, even though if wards were perfectly proportional, there would be between 3 and 4 majority Asian American wards in the city at this point. So that is a huge win for equity for our Asian American communities. And so organizations like Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community and Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago have both, again, said very good things about our map and our process. However, these organizations are working under constraints of trying to advocate for their communities specifically, and therefore do not want to make enemies of the Black Caucus drawing their map, do not want to make enemies of the Latino Caucus drawing their map. My understanding is that they are still working as best they can towards those specific outcomes, and that's what we hear also from other communities. There's a lot of people that are willing to say, yes, this is important, but we haven't yet found those community organizations that are really going to come out and say, this is what we want to happen, because the strategy, the tactics of the situation really dictate that this is so important that you don't want to stake a claim on the losing side because you have so much to lose for your future political ambitions or electoral ambitions of your community. Regarding business communities, we have not had much engagement with the business community. I would be more than happy to talk to someone from Cranes and get that business angle here and see what they're interested in. I'm not sure that there would be too much that the business communities would be interested in here. So we did absolutely take into account business districts. I spent a lot of time looking at the SSA maps, the special service areas that are a good way to see the various business districts within Chicago and try and keep those all within individual wards. We did a lot of work to keep kind of Jefferson Park's business district, Six Corners business district cohesive there. But that has, we've been people focused here. So we haven't really been putting specific effort towards business communities. But if business communities think that business as usual is working fine, then yeah, support an incumbent map. But if they feel like Chicago is not on the right track and we need to make some changes, that's maybe it's a good point for them to support this map.
Wonderful. Chris has another question about neighborhoods and then a specific neighborhood. The 77 neighborhoods currently defined are clearly out of date. For example, Streeterville has an active community organization and apparently feels separate from other portions of River North. Is Streeterville in a single district under the People's Map? And if you could just talk about out of date neighborhoods in general, would be interesting if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, oh absolutely. I made a presentation to Shy Hack Night earlier this week, I believe it was. And this also came up there about the 77 neighborhood areas were formed about 100 years, almost 100 years ago now. So they are out of date. Things have shifted, realities have shifted. Even so, so I don't believe that updating them is a great idea because for two reasons. One, they aren't terrible, and two, a lot of the 77 community areas are defined by the built environment that has not changed. And people have a reasonable idea of these communities, and there are various updated maps of the city. I know the city maintains a neighborhood map on their data portal as opposed to a community area map that includes some. I think Streeterville is included in it, a handful of other places that aren't community areas like Old Town, I believe, also show up there. However, to directly answer your question, if Streeterville is the area at least partially enclosed by Oak Street on the north, Rush Street on the west, the lake on the east, and the river or Grant Park on the south, then it's all in one ward. I can share really quickly again, and I'll drop it off again. So I don't know exactly what your definition of Streeterville is, or if there is a cohesive definition, but everything here, south of Oak Street, west of Rush west of Rush is enclosed here. So we also get the Lakeshore East, residential areas down there. So I believe that my answer is yes, but I would defer to your expertise as a community member.
Okay, great. Linda has a question. Has the People's Map been impacted by the loss or gain of population groups?
Yes. So I think this is a really fantastic angle here to talk about the People's Map and juxtapose it with the incumbent map. So the People's Map, first and foremost, look to keep communities together, but without detracting from the incredibly important project of racial equity. So there has been substantial depopulation of our, Black community members, unfortunately, over the last 20 years. And so the number of Black majority wards by necessity have gone down. And the big question here that I really see is, do we want equity to mean a specific number in a specific equation to say, oh, this means there are 18 Black wards? Because the cost of 18 Black wards is splitting communities up necessarily so that hyper-segregated areas are connected to like profoundly different areas of the city, in which case there's a very reasonable chance that a more strongly resourced candidate could overrule the will of the people of those traditionally disenfranchised communities. In my mind, it's really an argument of a quantity versus quality type of thing. Like, do you want 16 cohesive community-focused Black wards, or do you want 18 spaghetti-shaped, very, very difficult to cohesively organize in for a people-focused candidate wards, right? That really does seem to be what the differences are here. And likewise on the Latino population has grown moderately over the past 10 years. And we had the same exact discussions. We actually had drawn a map that had one more majority Latino ward than the map that we went with, but the members of our 13-member commission, specifically, a handful that identify as Latino are from majority Latino wards. They got together, they talked to their community, they figured out, look, we would rather have 15 good-shaped wards than 16 wards where by necessity it would make a lot of these wards not representative of communities. Like, yes, there is a number on a spreadsheet that says 50.1%, but that does not mean that you're going to have a good candidate representing the best interest of the Latino folks in that community. And so we really erred on the side of quality instead of quantity when it came to these changes in population among these population groups. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we drew the only and first Asian American majority award, which we definitely feel is a step in the right direction for racial equity in our city.
Wonderful, thank you. Diane asks, what are the criteria for placing the central node of each ward? And she further asks, what mapping software did you use, if any?
Yeah, so fantastic question, thank you. So for placing, we didn't so much start with central nodes, but we definitely started from kind of like a donut type of thing. I guess there's a center of definitely asking the people of these communities, what holds your community together? What is the important main drag? What are the big attractions? What are the defining aspects, parks, churches, shopping centers, whatever have you, that really define what your community is? But then we also ask people, very importantly, kind of like, what are the boundaries? So we kind of wanted to know both what's that core, but then what do you think of as the perimeter of your community, so that we could have an idea of where could we be drawing these lines? Because very often communities like Austin, I believe Austin has approximately 90,000 people, the community area of Austin, and it would be illegal to draw one ward that is 90,000 people, that is the community area of Austin. So it's very important to us not only to know those, kind of as you're saying, central nodes, but also to know what are the borders that the people are telling us they know of as where their community ends, where their community begins. And so both of those were directly informed by the testimony that we were receiving from the people at our community-based meetings where we're doing this throughout the city. The mapping software, I'm so excited that you asked that question, is actually this fantastic piece of open source software called Districtor that was developed by a group out of Tufts University. And what we actually ended up doing was using a version that I modified. I added a bunch of extra features. I took my computer science, like actual developer skills, and dusted them off instead of actually just telling the students what to do, and added a handful of features there that made it easier for us not only to draw maps faster and draw maps easier, but to draw maps better by allowing us to have a very fine-grained control of every block by block. How do we want to define what these communities look like? And again, in that spirit of openness, the source code for this is all out there. It's public on my GitHub page. Anybody can see what that software is, what it's deployed as, how it works, and inspect that. But that's something that everybody was allowed to use and follow along with at home. And it is available at wardmap.app.
Thank you. I think we're moving into some specific ward questions now, and I'll start with my ward, actually. I didn't hear you mention Alderman Sophia King of the 4th Ward when you were ticking off the various aldermen. I haven't had a chance to look at the map, but what's going on? I know, first of all, that is one crazy looking ward, the way it just shoots up the side. Could you just give us a kind of what would happen? What's happening with the 4th Ward? What is currently the 4th Ward?
Sure thing. So if you don't mind, I will pull up a visual aid again, because I think that will be helpful. And so, as you mentioned, just to have everybody recall, the 4th Ward here extends from Kenwood and kind of the western or eastern section of Grand Boulevard in Bronzeville, all the way up here into the loop and a chunk of the South Loop. So the bad things that we have here are pretty apparent, right? The community of the South Loop is split up. The community of Bronzeville is split up. The community of Grand Boulevard is split up. The community of what we heard a lot of people telling us of Hyde Park and Kenwood, which have very, very close ties, are also split up. Hyde Park itself also split up, right? And so this is, not like, this is a good example of a ward that doesn't reflect a cohesive community. And I have not paid too close attention, but I am not aware, I don't know too many, 4th Ward, fans that are just like, yes, we are being governed as well as we possibly can. So to show you what this, near South Lakefront area looks like in our ward map, we have a South Loop map. And so the northern border of this was drawn by us trying to decide, from the people that talked to us, and we had a lot of folks from South Loop talking to us about our map and advocating for themselves. It was really, really exciting to talk to all those folks. They were saying, the northern border of the South Loop is either Jackson or, Congress Ida B. Wells, and everything south of there is the South Loop. And so, we've got this South Loop ward. And then again, talking to community members, where does where is a good boundary between, this northern kind of Mercy area, northern Bronzeville, down to more of this Douglas and, greater Bronzeville area. And 31st also came up multiple times talking to various community members there. And some of these, one important thing to note here is that we're never going to please all the people all the time. We're going to, by necessity, have to cut some communities up, but we really strive to make it as few as possible and make those cuts as, logical as possibly can be in order to make sure that the map in aggregate overall is as best it possibly can be. So you got this North Kenwood, core Bronzeville ward right now, and you could think of this as probably the new 4th Ward, and then importantly also the the main Hyde Park Kenwood area also stays cohesive down here. And I guess you could call that the new 5th ward. This is another important aspect of our process, was that we didn't start from the currently existing ward map, and we didn't try to say, oh, that old ward is this new ward. Because we really wanted to say, rather than being stuck in a rut of drawing in the same lines and moving the same lines, we want to do first and foremost what's best for the people, start from a blank slate, and that's what we ended up with.
Great. Okay, and Chris asks a question here. My specifics for Ward AA, part of current 42nd Ward. Why is the loop divided into 2 wards? Won't that make it difficult for the business district? Why include a small part of the river north along the river? Why divide the ward on the west at the river rather than go to Dan Ryan? Sorry, I butchered that a little, Chris, but I think I got it out.
So I'll pull this back up here. So this southern border, the main motivator for the southern border here was the testimony of the folks from the South Loop. And what they were advocating for us is what cohesively defines that South Loop. I would also, in my own personal opinion, not necessarily the opinion of the commission overall, I believe that one slice through the central business district that's easy to understand there at Jackson will not impede the ability of the Fortune 500 companies that operate downtown to continue to effectively advocate for themselves. The loop has been absolutely booming, right, residentially and just development-wise overall. Regarding the sliver of River North, I guess a big thing here is that this is a relatively small area population-wise, but it's very, very large and very, very dense. I'm sorry, geographically it's very small, but population-wise it's very, very large. And so moving some of these lines, just north 1 block, south 1 block would immediately push us towards, oh, this map is not acceptable. This map would be more than 5% away from ideal, which would mean that it would be on its face illegal. Likewise, the same basic argument works for taking a look at extending from the river over to the Dan Ryan. This West Loop area is very, very densely populated, right? You got presidential towers, you've got a handful of other residential high rises there. Very, very quickly would push that ward over. And I think at the end of the day, this process was absolutely about making the best decisions, but also making the least bad decisions. Because if we were to push this ward over here, then this West Loop ward, which we also consider to be a reasonably cohesive collection of neighborhoods, would need to grow. Would it grow into the South Loop? And then that would mean, okay, well, then we'd have to start splitting up the South Loop. And we can understand the same thing is going to be happening up here in this near north side Gold Coast area. We determined, we kind of want to keep Gold Coast together. We want to keep Streeterville together. We want to keep, the Lincoln Park area together, this Eastern Lincoln Park. We really ended up coming up with the least bad options. And we think we put together not the mathematically proven least bad option, but something that approximates an orders of magnitude improvement over what City Council will be drawing otherwise.
Great. Okay. Abigail has a question. She'd like to know, what is the intelligent about what Alderman Brian Hopkins thinks? He and Vasquez introduced a resolution to hold hearings on process.
So the resolution that you mentioned, I believe that was the one from the beginning of this year. Yeah. So I don't recall whether Hopkins is a co-signer on the Latino Caucus Map. I'd have to look that up in Legistar. I don't think that this map would be bad for Brian. Like, I have absolutely no intelligence whatsoever from Brian Hopkins directly. I'd love to talk to him and see what his opinion is. If I were to pretend to be Brian Hopkins, I would say this doesn't look too bad. There's a very strong, cohesive kind of Goose Island plus Lincoln Yards plus West Lakeview, West Lincoln Park here. And yeah, if he's a good alderperson, then I would see no problem with him, running again in this ward. It's going to be very hard for him to have a ward that even roughly approximates his current ward, because it's a doozy. Yeah, to Pris's question there, yes, the staffers of Change Illinois have been very actively, kind of full-time, working on discussing the people's map with the alder people. They've had dozens of meetings and are, they're not getting completely brushed off, but they're definitely getting told, like, until 2 weeks ago, it was, oh, budget, we can't work on this now. And now it's, haven't seen all the maps, et cetera, stuff like that. So yeah, we are attempting to talk to them and have been having very good meetings. They're very much on board with the process. They're very much on board with the people being involved, but it's going to come down to brass tacks very soon. And we need to preemptively let them know that this matters, right? If any of you live in, any ward with a progressive alderperson, we would love it if you would leave them a voicemail saying, I support the people's map. You need to support the people's map, because, our city is being harmed by privileging incumbents in this process over and over and over again.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions? We don't need to be quite so formal at this point. Just raise your hand and unmute yourself. Go ahead, unmute yourself, Abigail.
Chris, one of the things that's, well, the League of Women Voters has long supported independent redistricting. Your commission aimed to model this so that citizens could see what happens if the council would legislate independent districting. Tell us a little bit. My understanding is you guys are volunteering now. You're done. Your work is done, but you all look to me very well together, and you're continuing to volunteer on behalf of, like this morning for you, on behalf. Tell us about the commission a little bit.
Definitely, yeah. So I believe there were approximately 400 folks that applied. 13 were chosen with, I believe, 3 or 4 alternates. And we were given a stipend for helping out with this process throughout that. So no question, right? Like, we were definitely compensated for our time and our hard work. And every one of these commissioners put a huge amount of, hard, earnest work into making this the best possible map it could be. And we think it's a fantastic map. There are, leading experts in the redistricting field that have said, wow, this is a very, very much not gerrymandered map. This is a very fair map. And we've also been given, personal communication. It's like, look, you guys did a better job than a lot of these other official commissions in terms of working together, in terms of listening to people and coming up with a good map at the end of the day. And it's just like, Chicagoans get it done. Like that was how we felt at the end of the process. If you get the right people in the room that believe in what you're doing, you're going to come up with a good map. So no question, if this map goes down in absolute flames, I will still be very, very proud of the fact that we showed proof of concept that a people-driven, equitable process can lead to a people-focused, equitable map. So that's definitely something that people can advocate for. It's proof that this process works. And yeah, since finishing this map, I believe it was October 1st or so, that we ratified this map. Basically, every commissioner, every single commissioner has been continuing to volunteer pro bono and take meetings with alders, talk to community groups, get the word out about the map. We're going to be having a rally. I believe it's not this upcoming Monday, but the next Monday, to really show our support for a people-focused mapping process downtown. And I'm looking forward to seeing all my former commissioners together there again. And we believe in the process, we believe in the outcome, and we believe in the possibility that this could be a city-changing event for the betterment of all Chicagoans.
So a quick question, because I'm still a little ignorant on the process, but so this map, is it a monolithic map that will not be tweaked in the process? Or is it a map from which one can start and some changes may be made to reach compromises to get it over the line?
That's a fantastic question. Thank you so much for bringing that up. The quick answer is yes. So the map is not set in stone. The commission as a whole, ratified, endorsed, approved this map as drawn to say this is the people's map that is the output of our people-focused process, right? That does not preclude the commissioners, the people, the community organizations from either, or doesn't preclude us from coming back and saying, you know what, we received some feedback from communities, we received some feedback maybe even from alder people that are willing to support such a map. And we want to say, like, look, do we want to say that a map with these changes is still the people's map? I believe the vast majority, or if not the entirety of the commission, mentioned that they would be interested in coming back and putting a people's map stamp of approval on a modified map that started from this map. And more getting to the real politic of it all, a map like this, it shows that this process can work, but if we were to be so rigid as to say my way or the highway, that'd be a very easy way to become irrelevant. So I do think that this map works really, really well as written. This map would still be really, really good for the people of Chicago if minor changes were made. And I'd even go as far as to say this map would work fantastic as a starting point for a negotiation between the Black Caucus and the Latino Caucus to try to come to some sort of conclusion about what the final ward map will look like. But if they can't come to terms, what we need is 10 alders who support the people of the city to pass some version of this map, or to bring forward some version of this map so that the people can actually vote and say, what is it that we want our ward map to look like for the next 10 years?
I follow up with, how would that vote be framed?
Yes, so this is very precisely defined in the statutes. There would be a question, presumably on the June primary ballot, that would say, which ward map do you want? Either choose one, A, the ward map passed by city council, B, the ward map passed by Alderwoman Maria Haddon, Alderperson Matt Martin, Alderperson Michelle Harris, et cetera, whoever those people are. That would be the wording on the map. So it would be worded as city council or list of aldermen by name.
Oh, okay. I think I finally got it. Abigail, you had a question? I
was just wondering, you mentioned I hadn't realized that the Latino map has been introduced. Has it been introduced in the council in a bill form, or is it just out there for everybody to see?
It was so they put it in Legistar. The actual text of the bill is not. It was not there when I looked. I don't know if they put it in since, but it's effectively introduced, right? It's in the system, and we've seen the picture. That's as far as I know.
Thank you.
So
and I think you've definitely added to our our discussion at the end is what the league can do, but you're mentioning this rally a week from Monday. I did not have that on my list of things, so I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Yes, it's in the final planning stages with change, so I'm sure they will be communicating about it as soon as it's finalized.
So is that where we're turning now? What can we as the league do in terms of action? What can we do as individuals in a certain ward? We want to hear from Chris. We want to hear from Abigail. We want to hear from individual members. This is definitely a group effort because we would like to get some action items behind this.
I'm going to try to get up the notice of the hearings. But I'm not there. Chris mentioned the 3 hearings next week. There are hearings the 9th, the 10th, and I think a week from Monday. There's a deadline for written comments to be sent by 10 o'clock Monday and the address is michelle.evans@cityofchicago.org. Michelle Harris is the chair of the Rules Committee, where this is all, who is hosting these public hearings. And I guess I can put her address in the chat, because this is a time for you as individuals to submit comments. They need to be in by writing, if they're in writing, by 10 o'clock Monday. We're not trying to sort of fill the agenda with individual league members, but we're hoping that the League of Women Voters, well, we will submit, the League of Women Voters will offer ourselves as a witness in one of those 3 hearings, but we really would love a lot of letters to the committee. So and I'm going to put in the chat the address to which you should send.
And also, Helene, will we be able to collect some of this information and some of the URLs that are in the chat to send out to participants?
I've got a whole pack of stuff, and I apologize that I think part of it is, I'll just say, switching between your system and my system. It doesn't matter. I will send the packet to everybody, which includes the notice of the hearings. But for now, take down that information in Helene's chat on how to become a witness, how to submit written testimony, because the written testimony is 10 o'clock Monday morning. And when I called to say, gee, that's funny, the hearings are going for a week, more than a week after that, she said, well, we just can't handle the workload. So I did write Brian Hopkins and said, there will not be any workload if you have this deadline for written comments of 10 o'clock Monday, because not every organization in the city had a meeting scheduled this morning like we did to get the word out to people.
So if I can interject, I need to be going to another Zoom, teleporting to another meeting at some point in the very, very near future. So if there are other questions that I'd be able to help with, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well,
but otherwise I'll probably.
Go ahead, Chris, and give us your list of to-dos for us before you say goodbye.
Or you could email that, because frankly, we want this to go out to all membership, and we'll put it in a newsletter. Obviously, we can't get that out before the Monday deadline, but the deadlines after that, we would love if you could send us your list, and we'll come up with some after you leave as well. Oh my gosh, you've been so wonderful. Thank you
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it and really enjoy hanging out with you all this morning. All right, I will put that in my to-do list to send you a to-do list, and then you will see that in your email sometime later today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.